the official death toll in Gaza, as I mentioned, is 29,000. It is much more than that. That is who they can count. Mostly women and children. Over 80% of Gaza's population has been driven from their homes. The homes are non-existent, being bombed, specifically completely in the north. It's just entirely destroyed, and a quarter of Gaza's population faces starvation at this moment. Israel has sieged the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis in the south, the largest functioning medical facility left in Gaza, and reports of torture of Palestinian civilians continue to trickle out. This is what Lula da Silva, the president of Brazil, said over the weekend. And he likens Netanyahu to Hitler here. This has obviously drawn outrage from pro-Israel folks, but
anybody who wants to be mad about that, you're raising your hand, and you're just directing the attention onto yourself. Like the idea that Zionists could be in any position to show any kind of outrage about anything at this moment after all these months, please. Yeah, please keep loudly yelling at us so we can start yelling at you.
We've said this before. I think it was maybe, either Thursday or Friday, Matt and I spoke about how using the term genocide directly in this moment is key, because we're democratizing the term, and that's not to be flippant about it. It's about developing a general public consciousness about what constitutes genocide and what international law really does mean, and what, there's insufficiencies in international law. But for so long, after World War II, whether it be Vietnam War, the Iraq War, the ruling elite rely on an ignorance about what constitutes legitimate warfare, what is illegal and what is legal. And Israel's actions constitute genocide many times over, because, as I'll read here, to democratize the term, Article 2 says, when targeting a specific group, genocide, if any of the following acts are committed, that means that it is one. A, killing members of the group. B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. The hospital attacks are a part of that. E, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. E is the only one where you can put a question mark at the end. Israel has committed A, B, C, and D many times over on the Palestinian people and in this Gaza assault. And so the definition of genocide is met. Now that we've gotten to that point, it is not controversial for someone like Lula da Silva to say what he says, because genocide is already happening, and it just is about the scope that we're going to reach. And
I just want to dwell a little bit on, you say democratize, like to drill into that a little bit more. What we're doing really is redeeming it from what it's become, which is a buzzword that the West uses when it wants to license itself intervening militarily. Yes, and paper over the genocides that we have funded or supported. Exactly. Also, that they implicitly also, redeem us from that, which, right, exactly. So, it needs to be a word that actually means what it's taken to be said, not just when we want it to basically get our tanks and, aircraft carriers moving. Exactly. And so that is why, say it in polite conversation, it is not controversial. Israel is committing genocide. Now we take another step forward in the conversation about Zionism. And this is what Lula said, and I will read for the podcast audience the translation. What is happening in the Gaza Strip with the Palestinian people has no parallel in other historical moments. In fact, it did exist when Hitler decided to kill the Jews. It is very funny when I see the rich world announcing that it is stopping contributions.
for humanitarian relief for Palestinians. I am left wondering how big the political conscience of these people is, and how big is the heart of solidarity of those people who are not seeing that in the Gaza Strip there is no war going on, it's a genocide. It's not a war between soldiers and soldiers, it's a war between a highly trained army and women and children. Those are irrefutable points. I mean, if you want to say that it's unfair because of the death toll to compare Netanyahu to Hitler, I would say that, by God, have we failed the victims of the Holocaust if we allow genocides to get to the point where they become a Holocaust, where we are on the verge of the extermination of an entire group of people, where, you know, millions and millions and millions are exterminated in the way that 6 million Jews were exterminated in the Holocaust. By God, have we completely abandoned our promise to establish a rules-based international order if we allow that to happen. Now, by the numbers of Palestinians, there just are not as many. So
1.9 have been displaced. 1.9 million.
And just to give people, I'm on the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum website, and if you think it's unfair, this is just some paragraphs that were written about the German Nazi propaganda at the time. Before and after the fact, the Germans used deceptive euphemisms to explain and justify deportations of Jews from their homes to ghettos or transit camps, and from the ghettos and camps to the gas chambers at Auschwitz and other killing centers. German officials stamped "evacuated," a word with neutral connotations, on the passports of Jews deported from the Germany and Austria to the model ghetto at Theresienstadt. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that. I've never heard that said out loud. Near Prague, or to ghettos in the east. German bureaucrats characterized deportations from the ghettos as, quote, resettlements, though such resettlement usually ended in death. And then other parts of this piece here on the Holocaust Memorial website. Before the German attack on Poland in September 1st, 1939, the Nazi regime launched an aggressive media campaign to build public support for a war that few Germans desired. To present the invasion as morally justifiable defensive action, the German press played up Polish atrocities, referring to real or alleged discrimination and physical violence directed against ethnic Germans living in Poland. The press deplored Polish warmongering and chauvinism and attacked the British for encouraging war by promising to defend Poland in the event of German invasion. Just basically, like, these are just fascist tactics when you're trying to justify a genocide. Creating a pretext. They're all terrorists. We'll play that clip from the Israeli president at one point in the fun half. Fun-ish, I mean, whatever. But creating a pretext for support for the war, dehumanizing the people that you're going to invade, and then lying just completely about your intentions with a particular population. So, you know, the atrocities of the Holocaust are, I mean, never again say that with your entire chest. But when we're talking about the intentions or like the ideology behind a leader, yeah, Netanyahu's ideology is quite similar to that of the Nazis.
Yeah, and actually anti-Zionist Jews have been saying and making the comparison between Zionists and fascists and Sephardi's, and it disrespects them to act like that hasn't been a through line of anti-Zionism throughout the time. So I'm not going to be here to do that. But I also want to say, like, the only one thing I will quibble about with Lula is actually, like, even prior to the Holocaust, like, these massacres, this is a product of settler colonial societies. They do have precedents. What's going on in Gaza, in my opinion, you look up the Mystic Massacre, where it's always very easy to slip into I think it's historical guilt. But the English settlers, in a time of conflict with the Pequots, went to the village that didn't have any of the warriors but the women and children and set it on fire. and burned hundreds of them. And that was about a few decades after we'd been here as the West. So like this is what settler colonial societies will do unless we completely repair, unless we at least do, I mean, even like, South Africa's gone a long way towards repairing this sort of damage by leading this sort of charge. Obviously, like that society has a lot to do with regards to equality, particularly on economic lines and land lines. But yeah, like, these sorts of things, they actually, the never again sort of stuff, I understand where that comes from, but I also think we need to understand that this stuff is a natural product. It's not some sort of supernatural thing that is visited on humanity.
Abstracting the Holocaust from history, abstracting it from general, like expansionist and imperial aims of the West. I mean, people describe fascism as colonialism or imperialism turned inward. And so we can't just look at when it has been turned inward. We have to look at what the West has and colonial powers have inflicted upon the world. And I'm sure there probably are cases in Brazil's history that aren't great either. True.
And it's just, but as we stand right now, like that stuff is, 1600s. This is 2024 and we're looking at it in 4K. And we're to see, and you know what's crazy? You look at the Mathers, the sort of psycho fundamentalists of Massachusetts, talking about Amalek. Literally citing smiting of the Amaleks.
Who's saying that?
The Mathers, back in like 1700s, 1600s.
Okay, really?
Yes, they literally cited. In the fun half, I'll get the citation.
Yes.
Literally, as they were carrying out their genocidal campaign, literally citing the same parts of the Old Testament. So, I appreciate the, maybe the rhetorical device of saying this has never happened. This is the urgency of it. But we actually, we need to understand that these things are a product of the structure of society that we've inherited. Let's put it that way.